Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome you to our CRA Special Board meeting this December the 7th, 2023. And with that, I'll call this meeting to order. Could we all please stand together for our Pledge of Allegiance to the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Chair Blackwell.
Here.
Vice Chair Irvin.
Here.
Member Matheny.
Here.
Member Gilbert.
Here.
Member Fletcher.
Here.
Member Wagner.
Here.
Member Loden.
Here.
Thank you.
Before I ask for the approval of the minutes, just I'd like to congratulations to Mr. Gilbert, who is a brand new granddad as of today. A brand new grandbaby. Congratulations.
Yeah, couldn't happen on a better day, my anniversary.
Oh, seriously? That's awesome.
And also like to say congratulations to Miss Antoinette at this new certification that she's earned. A lot of work. Congratulations.
That is awesome.
With that, we come to the approval of our minutes for August 3rd, 2023, as well as August 17th, 2023 minutes. Are there any corrections or additions to those minutes? If not, do I have a motion for approval?
Motion.
And I
Motion.
second. I'll see we got a second there also. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And they pass unanimously. Brings us to new business. Our first item is a presentation on the CRA extension of financing.
Good evening, Antoinette Forbes, Economic Development Director. We have brought before you, I think twice before, our intention to extend the lifespan of the CRA. We wanted to bring it back before we present it to the county to give you the opportunity to comment, provide any suggestions or edits, but we also want to bring back the financing piece as well, because the composition of our CRA board has changed since the last time we brought it up. And so we wanted to give you the opportunity to see some alternative financing mechanisms, particularly as we talk about bonding, because we're now going into very project-based activities. And so in order to meet our timelines of our 5-year strategic plan, we need to be aggressive in terms of locating alternative financing sources, but also making sure that we are timely and that we are able to complete these projects whether or not the extension occurs. So with that being said, I have our consultant from RMA, Adrian Esteban, here to provide the presentation, and then afterwards you can give us your comments.
Good.
Good evening, everyone. Adrian Esteban, Senior Project Manager with RMA. So as Antoinette said, tonight we're going to be talking about the potential extension and the projects that would be associated with that. So if you remember, the Strategic 5-Year Financing and Implementation Plan was approved by the CRA board at the time. And in that document, we had outlined specific projects that we thought that the CRA should accomplish. One being the Centennial Plaza, a renovation of that, as really connecting it to as a town square that the community could access. We also included alleyway improvements, parking, whether it be temporary, short-term, or eventually long-term in some type of structured parking garage. Historic preservation and concentration on that, especially in the downtown area. And then land acquisition, which you all have started, I believe, and are going to be continuing. The last piece of that would be business attraction. So really this is following your CRA master plan, where you're looking to do infill development and attract different businesses as well as hotels. So this could be accomplished through development incentives that you might have the capacity for at the current time. So for the downtown area, again, we're outlining these specific projects of Centennial Plaza, streetscape around the plaza, although some of that has already occurred, alleyway improvements, parking, historic preservation, land acquisition, business attraction, and looking for if there's any other recommended projects that you all would contemplate. Do you want me to go through the whole? Okay, we'll go through the whole thing and then we'll come back to what other projects. For the central target area, really 192 is the main thoroughfare through your city and really your CRA. A complete street example would really be the most fitting project for that, where you have modes of transportation for walkers, bikers. Right now, it's obviously very car-driven, but working with FDOT, seeing if there's some solutions for that street. Your city has already started the complete streets, which look great, but continuing them in the outer areas, past downtown as well, would be a nice connection. There's also some other redevelopment opportunity sites that the city owns that are either vacant or have uses that are no longer looked to be in function. So those are some other opportunities, as well as infill housing around the edges, especially multifamily, that there's not a lot of in the downtown area. It's more single family. So those are our recommended projects for the central area. For the gateway, your medical arts campus looks like it's coming along fabulously with the Orlando Health new building. There's only a section of that that's in the CRA, but again, just trying to implement that and having the funding to do it. Wayfinding gateway features, I know you have that on your agenda tonight. Again, putting those in place so that it looks nice and cohesive in the city. And then transit infrastructure. CRAs cannot fund the transit itself, like a lot of cities are now doing the freebie. Unfortunately, the CRA can't pay for that, but they could pay for like infrastructure if there's like stations or things like that that are needed. So those are our recommended projects there. As far as financing, in the 5-year financing and implementation plan, we did highlight that we thought you all would have the capacity to have some kind of financing. In the plan itself, we did outline about $4 million, and what that went to were P3 projects, the redevelopment of the Centennial Plaza area, special projects being some kind of parking structure or towards a parking structure. So that was about $4 million that we had signaled. So what we looked at, and unfortunately, I'm sorry, the circles moved a little bit, but we looked at your historic growth, and then we did a pretty conservative estimate of what we thought you would be at for the next 5 years. And with that, we thought you had a pretty healthy budget of between 1.3 and 1.4 million, and that you would have that capacity to carry any kind of debt service. Now, what we did look at in that plan was a graduated payback, so it would start out low and then go a little bit higher each year. However, there are different options, which I'm going to get to in this slide. So, like Antoinette said, you have limited time, so you can do two things. You can look at doing any kind of financing now, which you probably will need due to the size of projects that you're looking to do, over either just what's remaining in the CRA, which there's a couple of ways to do that. Either you can look at, a graduated payback each year, or more of a steady one, but it would be over that same period. Or you could look at paying even less if it's during an extended period, an extension period. So I just wanted to give you an example of financing, because I know a lot of people are a little bit scared about taking on debt. But in this example, we worked with the city and a CRA who were very strategic about that financing. It's not like they just, did it and did nothing with it. They were very strategic. They knew they had certain issues, being streetscape. They needed a parking garage. This was on a beach location, so it's a little bit different. And then they had this 6-acre site that was right next to the beach. If you look at the top right, you'll see it. Right next to the beach, but it was used as a parking lot. The city was getting about $300 a month in parking revenue from a business that was renting spaces, basically. So because they were strategic, they did do $30 million in bonds to pay for a parking garage, a new streetscape, dune restoration, playground, basically completely renovating their beachfront. And what happened was, because the city had done that strategic investment, there was a private developer that worked with the city on this site. This was a city-owned parking garage, surface parking lot right next to the beach, to find a higher and better use. And they were able to do a commercial development. And it has taken they did it in phases, so it did take a while. It's started like in 2018, and they just opened their last tenant. So it took about 5 years. But now the assessed tax value had an increase of 41 million from before that development started to 2022. So that was even before its completion. It won't, hit the tax rolls till next year. And then additionally, because they did do the parking as well, the revenues increased from 500,000, and that included beach parking, before 2012. After the improvements and everything was done, there were about 4.2 million in 2022 now. So there can be an economic impact, a positive economic impact rather, to strategic investments that you do with the financing. So typically the steps are your financing analysis and financial underwriting with the lender. Your finance department will be, a major partner in that. But we looked at the numbers, and we do think you'll have the capacity to pay back any kind of loan that you're looking at. Typically, there's the par value with how much money you're taking out, a cost of issuance. That'll give you your total loan amount, and then you'll have your interest rate, obviously, and then your amortization period. You only have 8 years left in your current CRA, but if you do decide to extend, that could go for a longer amount of time. They will ask you for a project list of financing. We've done this in other cities. Typically, they want to know who the owner is, how long this project is going to take, and when you're going to start. And they'll want a pretty detailed summary of what you're planning on doing. For example, in a CRA that we worked in, we had thought we wanted to do land acquisition with bond funds. Unfortunately, our lender would not allow that, so we had to switch the project. So instead, the land acquisition got funded with TIF, and we had to switch it for another project. And then you'll have your financing approval. This will be pretty long pages, but you'll do it at a CRA board meeting in conjunction with your city commission for financing approval. So our recommended next steps are to compile your list of projects that you all want to see, estimate those projected revenues as well as your costs for those projects. You're doing the discussions with the county, which is already occurring. You'll prepare those, whatever the county wants, in order for you to potentially do the extension. Eventually, you will need to update your CRA plan and extend the CRA. And then for the financing portion, you'll want to do a financial analysis with your finance department and your lender for the financing underwriting. And then eventually, it'll come to you all for approval. But I'm sure your staff will let you know about every step of the way what they're doing. And with that, that ends my presentation.
Do we have any questions? Councilman, Member Gilbert?
Yep, I enjoy this and I read it and I really like it, and I'm not one to borrow money, but the ROI seems like it could be very, very well. I did like the alley presentation of utilizing that as public space for outside dining or walking or things such as that. I would just love to extend the CRA because as you and I have worked on it, Antoinette, we definitely need to extend that because it seems to be working for the city. Anything that you have, what's the process and procedures? And I know we go through the county now. Is it a tough thing to do? Because for me, the CRA is very important for the growth of this city, and extending it would be a great opportunity. So what do we need to do that before these projects get started? Because some of this stuff will last well upon the CRA's current arrangements.
So that's a multi-layered question. But one of the things that we need to do is make sure that we have transparent communication with the county, which is what we've been doing. Mm-hmm. But what we have not done in the past is ask their opinion on how we're moving forward. Instead, we as staff has kind of gone to them and said, here's our 5-year strategic plan. Now would you consider extending us? So one of the things that we learned from the FRA conference that we went to is how important it is to establish and cultivate those relationships from the beginning, so that as we're starting to put our preparations in place, we make sure that we have their input and they're more likely to have strong consideration. In reference to our projects, all the projects that we're looking at doing, we're looking at it twofold. One, if we can accomplish it by our expiration term. And then the alternative, hopefully, is if we're able to extend it, then maybe we don't have such an aggressive timeline. And then I think you also mentioned about the alleyways being kind of a sweet spot.
Right.
So we do have a presentation, staff presentation that's planned for you at the February CRA meeting, where we have engaged with a consultant now to start the design process. And at that meeting, he will get your input as well as what would you like to see when we start that project.
Okay. Well, thank you, and thank you for your continued hard work and getting certificates. I know you have a full-time job, and that's kind of added on stuff, so congratulations and thank you for all you do.
Thank you.
Member Fletcher.
Thank you again for everything that you do, and congratulations on the certificate and award. And I just wanted to echo the same comments that Member Gilbert had. There's a lot of stuff that we're working on that is going to obviously take some time to be able to put together. And I think for the county to go ahead and assist us by extending it will definitely make that those projects come to fruition. And we were talking about the communication, or you were talking about the communication with the county. I think we should do the same thing maybe with FDOT, because the CRA is not only downtown, it's also along 192, and I believe from Michigan to, let's say, Tennessee, Buddington area, all the way to the Medical Arts campus. As we start to identify projects, we can communicate that with the county as well. So it's not just focusing on the downtown, but more citywide, so that we could take advantage of the use of the CRA during its time, plus the extension, to be able to accomplish projects that are going to have a lasting impact on the community. So those are my thoughts, and thank you again.
Member Matheny.
Thank you. Antoinette, I know we've been working for a long time about extending. I mean, that's been prior to Adam being on here. I at least know, like, we've been talking about this for a while. I think Dave Askew brought it up initially. Like, where are we in the process with them? I know we're coordinating, and I believe their feedback was they were open to it, but they needed to see our plan.
Right. And
But, like, yeah, so where are we in the timeline of kind of finding out a decision or?
so what we provided them was our 5-year strategic plan. And so the county manager's comments was that it was not substantive enough. That's not a direct quote, but that he wanted more information in terms of specific projects. He wanted cost estimates attached to it, as well as timelines. So that is why we're here now, to make sure the projects that we are proposing, and if there are any additional ones, so then we can give them that information. But also, number 2, is so we find out the temperature of the board as it relates to alternative financing, because we need to include that as part of our request as well. Any financing that we would do, it could not go beyond the lifespan of the CRA.
So, then it would go, once all that gets worked out, then it has to go to the BOCC, I guess, for review and things. So just so you guys know, I happened to be in a meeting years ago. Sorry, Danny adjusted my settings. I don't know how to turn my watch off. I don't know how to do it. So I was in a meeting several years ago at the county, and they were talking about all the different, I'd call them like vampire funds, right, that are taking money out of their general funds. And at the time, they were saying, we're not doing any more of these. We have to cut back because we're not able to do the stuff that we need to do because we're, doing all these things. So I understand they're like wanting to review it, because I heard them say it in a strategic planning meeting like 4 or 5 years ago. But I have confidence you're going to get them all the information they need, and we'll be able to move forward. Because, yeah, I mean, it'd be exciting to do these projects and use this funding source.
Member Irving.
Yeah, so just great comments. I would concur with all of that, but this might be a stupid question. I was just wondering, of course, we would love to continue our partnership with the county and work with them as much as possible, but if that doesn't happen, can the CRA move forward independently without the county, or is there an option for that? No. Okay.
Can't, we need a county approval to do that.
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Excellent presentation. Thank you for all your help. The next item on our agenda is a wayfinding signage presentation.
So as part of our master plan as well as our strategic plan, we talked about establishing a true sense of place in the CRA overall. We talked about gateway signage as well as wayfinding signage in our downtown. So this is one of the projects where I talked about we're now getting project specific and not just in programming. And so we reached out to GAI to start the process of designing a signage program. It should be noted that they actually had a program about 3 years ago. 2018, before we went under our rebranding. So since the rebranding, we had to call them back so they can update their plan. Since then, they have gotten feedback from our businesses. They've also gotten feedback from the department directors. So what you see will be a culmination of all the feedback they've received, and now we would like to present it to you and hear your thoughts before we move forward. I'd also like to present Anna Kimmelton from GAI.
Thanks, Antoinette. Like previously stated, we were retaining 2018, and that project was put on hold because we were going through a rebrand. Wayfinding is part of the placemaking, so it has to be an extension of that brand. So the effort that we were previously doing obviously was not going to be successful until we understood the requirements and the new branding program. So we, like Antoinette said, we gave some surveys, printed and in digital. People filled them up, and we reviewed the answers. Design is very subjective, but based on the brand and the feedback that we received from those surveys, we created 3 different schematic design options of the whole family of signs that we're proposing. So, hold on, it doesn't look to be in order, but it doesn't matter. Option B, we're going to start with option B. One of the things that we ask is, because we understood that the brand was translating new emotions, there's a lot of contemporary things, there's new colors. We're moving a little bit away from that historic seal logo that you previously had, and it's a more contemporary and modern font type. You have a lot of icons and colors that you're exploring to sort of expand the logo, not just into your logos, but certain areas that you may have. It translates to park, it translates to the CRA, to the new economic development and entertainment district. So we looked at all of that as well as what we heard. We heard a lot of people saying that they wanted this wayfinding system to have a more historic and traditional look. But we also, that is just a word, and again, design is very subjective. So we also added images to that survey to sort of understand what traditional and contemporary look was. And most of the people went for signage that was very modern, very linear, very simple, very minimalistic. And we can agree with that, looking at the logo of the brand and the icons that we've created. We want to make sure that whatever comes now, it's timeless, and you don't have that trendy look into it, where it will feel out of date and old in a couple of years. So option B follows that contemporary sign. Well, we went back to option, sorry, the slides don't seem to be in order. But option A is a more traditional look on your gateway signs. And I apologize, the fonts changed a little bit. But we are looking at doing this in the downtown area, in the CRA downtown area. When we were retained, the boundaries were very strict, and we were given certain streets as the boundary area, but we recommended that we looked a little bit over that, because we have to also understand how people are traveling into the city and into the downtown in order to create a legible wayfinding system. So we have our scope area, but we're looking a little further out, and we want to make sure that we target Y92 and we locate signs there to drive people into this area. So there's no use on having just a system that signs in the downtown if you're not really looking into how people are coming into the downtown area. So we have gateway signs, and these are all options, and it doesn't have to, the final answer for this doesn't have to be I like option A. It can be a hybrid. We can like certain elements, again, it's design, and we can, right now we're in a schematic level, So we can bring things that we like from each one of them to make sure that we're creating a system that fits and is designed for St. Cloud. We are looking at having gateway signs, having vehicular signs. You can see that there's 2 different scales. We're following ADA and FDOT requirements. FDOT requires that for every road that is over 25 miles per hour, we have a 6-inch font. So the size and the magnitude for the signs have to be translated into those requirements. We did a sign inventory here in 2018, and a lot of the FDOT signs that you have are not compliant to their regulations. So we do have a little bit of wiggle room when we request those removal for the signs, not just to say that the signs are redundant, but we have backups that they may not be compliant with the requirements, so it'll be easy to just replace one with the other. For example, the waterfront ones, the letters, the fonts are condensed. So if we're replacing that sign, we can say the message is on the sign currently, we don't want any redundancy, and the current sign doesn't follow FDOT compliances, and it's not legible. And we can come in and have a removal plan attached to our signs. We're also looking at adding pedestrian kiosks and pedestrian information. The vehicular sign, there's only so much we can digest when we're driving. So the vehicular sign is intended to just lead people to the appropriate parking location. And then once you have a map, you can actually add more layers to the signs. You can highlight where the entertainment district is. You can have different logos and icons to translate that. You can have a QR code that links to the Chamber of Commerce and just explore all the businesses that are in the downtown area. This is where we add as much information as we want. And then again, not all of us learn the same way. Some people have the time to digest the map and some don't. So we also have at the top just directional information, the arrow, straight ahead, left turn, right turn to your destination if you don't have the time to just digest and understand the map. But this is great because I can come here just to come to City Hall. I run into one of these maps and I can see everything that St. Cloud downtown has to offer, and it'll encourage me to explore and see and maybe go to a restaurant and go to a coffee shop. It can increase the footprint of the downtown area, and it also obviously increases revenue once you're letting people know what you have to offer as a destination. The second option is the contemporary one. We looked into the colors. We have to have a 70% contrast between the background and the message, so whatever colors we're translating there have to be ADA compliant and legible. You can see that we're using the St. Cloud logo in the same way throughout the system. We also can add the district name at the top or at the bottom. We heard that the band and the 3 colors were important and you're currently using it on your park system, so that's something that we want to translate here too. Every sign and every effort that you have needs to look like a family. It needs to look like it's all created by the same person, even if it's not, and it needs to look like it's from the same place and it belongs in the same place. So we have different options of gateway signs, and again, the pedestrian kiosk and all the pedestrian information. The limestone right now is just a placeholder, and it can change depending on where it's at. If the medical district wants a different kind of base, and we want to have brick closer to City Hall because it just fits the design and the feel and character better, we can do that without disrupting the family of the signs and the design. And then option C, again, follows the sign, and this one is more historical and tradition. This one, we looked at arches and what the arches represent. We looked at intentionally putting the St. Cloud logo at the top, and color coding districts, so we could have the downtown be a color, the parks be a different one, the MAC a different color, and translating that, so depending on where you are within the city of St. Cloud, you would have a different color representing. You would also have to have a map, like a legend, explaining people what those colors mean, but wayfinding is a learning exercise, and the more I see those signs, the more I can understand what the colors and the everything that's on the signs mean. Again, the whole family of signs, we have our pedestrian signs that are translated from that same line. We can do the same thing here, depending on where we are, that base could change. And then at the end of this exercise, we can all create an option D, which is a combination of all of them. If we like some signs better than the others, the gap between the blades there is just to show that it's a modular sign. It's one sign blade per destination. A destination changes, you don't have to change the whole face. But that doesn't mean there has to be a gap there. We can put blades back to back, touching each other, so it looks like one single blade if that's something that we want. But just to know that moving forward, we don't have to stick with one design option. It can be a hybrid depending on what we like and dislike from the system. And I think that's all I have for right now.
Member Gilbert, would you like to ask a question?
I'll try not to be long-winded, but in signage, what I believe is location, location, location. I also don't believe hybrid. We need to theme the signs. They need to be the same way. It's almost like signs for dummies. You want to make it to everybody recognizes a sign. They know it's a St. Cloud sign. It's not one district to one sign. Just from my professional business, you get a theme and you roll with the theme. You try not to put dates or times on it because then you don't have to move those signs. And then following the signage of where it goes to, a larger sign, bring them in. I have some of the citizens here go, well, we didn't know things happened downtown. Well, we need to get signage east, west, north, and south. It doesn't have to be specifically in this area. It needs to bring them to this area. But think about a marketing idea. You want to bring the masses to a location, and to do that, you have to have signs for dummies. And I apologize saying that, but in the convention industry, they'll go, hey, where's meeting room 202? And it'll be right there. But if you don't put a sign up, they won't see that meeting room. So we have to,
Absolutely.
we have to do that. And the hybrid situation for this, I just don't agree with. And again, the council could tell me that I'm wrong, but it has to be themed and it has to be consistent. Hey, I'm in St. Cloud now. I know where the hotel is. I know where the restaurants are. I know where the medical district is. I really would believe if we look at a big picture and bring it down, we used to call them bird's eye views, now they're drones views, of where we put these locations of these signs to best benefit these people, because these are permanent signs. We would love to see, at least I would, a sign where you come into St. Cloud, the gateway of family fun and friendship, or whatever we decided that sign goes on. And then with the boundaries of the sign should reach every part of St. Cloud. If we're going to do this with the CRA, we need to at least direct them to what we're doing for this, because this town is not getting smaller. It's expanding, and I would love to see the people from Kissimmee Park Road having dinner down here in the area. And some of them, believe it or not, don't even know it exists. And it's hard to say. But, and then the size of signs you mentioned to me also, DOT and all those are good. But if you're looking at a vehicle going 40 miles an hour, 4x6 sign will hit them. A vehicle going 20 miles an hour, a 4x4 sign may hit them. So we have to look at the optics of those signs, I would think, as we present this. I do believe we need signs. I don't believe we need to do too many. I just think they need to be strategically placed for everybody that's driving down 192, that's getting off the highway, that's on our streets and valleys. So I love the presentation. I do not agree with the hybrid, because I want to theme this thing, so if future goes and we grow, we don't have to redesign and reevaluate. We can just add signage as 10 or 20 years down the line. Thank you for your presentation. That's just my 2 cents and probably 3 cents, and I apologize.
Thank you. And let me explain what I mean by hybrid. At the end, we will have a detailed palette, and that's going to be consistent in one. What I mean by hybrid is once we receive the feedback, we don't have to choose option A, option B, or option C. Okay. The final option, which will be consistently displayed in the whole system, won't be one piece of A, one piece of B, one piece of C. We will design the next iteration of the sign for the next phase. And by hybrid, I mean we can have certain elements of each one of them to create one cohesive, consistent sign for. the
And
city.
I love option C, and the reason why, and I love our logo, but our logo needs to be big when you're going 40 miles an hour. Our signs need to be big when you're at 20, 25 miles an hour. Our logo should be consistent, but it needs to be smaller as we slow down traffic and actually be directional signs versus St. Cloud. They'll know they're here, hopefully, by our signage, and we'll direct them to where they need to go. So thank you very much. I love option C just because it's so clean and it's so easy, and the arrows, and it's so, if you just look at it, it's visible. It's not too color coordinated where all these wide signs, they're white with the dark background. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Member Wagner.
Good evening. I agree with Ken. I own a business downtown, so I hear it all the time, and I've been here 8 years, and I didn't know you were here. So I agree that we have to have something to get people throughout the city, not just downtown. But my question is, with the way technology is going, and is there a way to go electronic with some of this stuff to keep it going for the next 30, 40 years, that we're able to change this instead of having to reprint a sign every time?
Absolutely. So we would recommend having, so on the pedestrian kiosk, you can kind of see it. We have the options, again, these are modular signs, so on the part that has the messages, that could become an electronic screen. It's great for marketing, you can charge for that, the signs would pay for itself. It's a great way to just advertise businesses and what's going on downtown. But we also have to consider that there might be some downtime, and we have to plan for it. So what we usually recommend when we're asked about technology is to have a double-sided sign where one side is always static and permanent. You have the map, you have the directional information, and then the other side has that screen. You don't want to overdo it either. And again, those are going to be more expensive, so you want to strategically place them where there's going to be more visual and more footprint. So we can absolutely do that, and then just have that be the back of the sign or the front of the sign, depending on how you're looking at it.
Member Fletcher.
Thank you. I really appreciate all of the options and the work that you've done so far. I have a couple questions to go through. You said that you had sent out surveys and things of that nature. Did we see a pretty decent response from the community, or not so much? Or
It depends what you mean by decent. We got about, do you remember, Internet, about 20 response? Remember?
Yes, we got about 20 responses. I can say that we distributed to the downtown business group, through Main Street, through the chamber.
Okay.
We also put it, I believe, on our social media page as well. And then we also did some direct kind of call door to door as well. So we got a small sample size.
Great. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it, because a lot of times the things that we hear is like, oh, the city's doing this, but we do try to reach out and try to get their input on these things that will make a difference in the community. And then placement. So these will be replacing all of the signs throughout the entire city. I would imagine, no?
No, so our scope is just the CRA.
Just the CRA.
Correct. For
So-
now, we are doing the placements for the vehicular site on that, what I mentioned, that study area, just so we can lead people from 190 to here.
Okay.
And one of the requirements that DOT has is that if we have, for example, the waterfront park as a destination, they want to see that, what we call the breadcrumb trail, that all the routing all the way through how we're messaging and getting people to their
Oh, that's
destination.
right. CRA goes
So,
straight down. Okay.
correct. So we have the vehicular signs in all that area, and then the pedestrian signs are just for the downtown. That's for now their scope of work.
And then right now we don't have. Is the replacement of the signs budgeted, or we're not there? We're trying to put together the schematic so that we can.
So I can answer that and the other one. I also want to say, so their scope is only for the CRA because of the funding source. However, that was one of the reasons it was so critical to include all the department directors, because the idea behind it is that it expands beyond the CRA. And so, as Anna alluded to, there's also, just because the sign may be physically located in the CRA, it may give direction to places that are outside of it. And so we kept that in mind as well when we were discussing the design. And then in terms of the maintenance and future upkeep, So the CRA in general is designed to do startup and initial infrastructure acquisition, demolition, those sort of things, but they, CRA funds, trust funds should not be for maintenance or continuous of services.
Okay. Yeah, that was actually one of the things, is if the cost could be shared between, city council, CRA, to be able to change signs. And then is there a timeline for when we would be looking at doing the construction of?
As soon as possible. So we are trying again to expedite this, knowing that we have this expiration date in our path. There has been a reoccurring, I think about $50,000 that's set aside every year in the CRA budget we've been carrying over in order to start this. It is our intention to make this a priority item. Once we get a cost estimate of what this would look like, then we'll have to come back to the board in order to allocate those funds specifically for this project.
Okay, and then you had mentioned a removal plan. I would like to see, I don't know if it's something, if our GIS guys, if there's somebody, so I could see where, like, what signs are gonna be replaced and what locations. I don't know if that's something that could be, or where new signs would go, to give us an idea. I know a while back, Main Street, the city council, CRA, they worked on a gateway arch, which I'm sure the mayor and Matheny are aware of. And I would definitely like to see something, because, I mean, you could drive down 192 and miss downtown St. Cloud in 2 seconds. And we hear it all the time. So trying to get people to the downtown is super important. And then my opinion on the actual options here would be, I really like option B, but I would like to carry over characteristics from options C and A. So if you're looking for my specific advice, I like the arches because of the historic feel of those, while complementing, let's see, so the historic arches, and then the little squares on option A at the bottom, the colored logos, I like that. For me, I like option B with some type of arches incorporated with the logos from option A. So that's all the
That's
comments
your
I got.
Thank you.
Member Matheny.
Thank you. You don't have a slide that compares the 3 different options, do you?
No, not here.
Can you click through them again? Because I know we've had a lot of back and forth. That's an A, that's a B, back to an A. Like,
You want these?
sure, if you have it printed. Thank you. Am I allowed to look at them?
Go ahead.
Started looking at it already.
Well, I know, it says he's got a handwriting on it. I don't know. It's fine.
We'll just save it.
Okay, that was it. Oh, and the other thing is, I mean, we all probably remember, there would be a banner across 192 when I was growing up, and it would tell you like what events were going on and whatever. Like that was such a great way to like, you knew what was going on. But my understanding is like 192 won't let us do that anymore because like you can't span it because it's so wide and.
That and the city actually had an accident where the banner came down and caused a motor vehicle accident maybe about,
Yep.
I don't know, maybe about 15 years ago maybe or something. And then, so the US 192, it's controlled by DOT, they said no more banners
banners.
across.
Yeah, it is a challenge. I mean, because we all live here, and everybody will be like, "Well, there's a tree lighting. I didn't even know." Like somebody I ran into on Friday was like, "I didn't even know you had a tree lighting." I'm like, "It's only been 100 years, it's been going on." But anyway, it's I don't know. We have not cracked the nut of how to get word out and have people know. And I mean, we just really haven't been able to do it yet. In my time, maybe in the next term, they'll be able to figure it out. But thank you for all your work. And you missed a D on St. Cloud. It bugged me on all your slides. See, like this
I
slide?
didn't say anything.
No, what happened is this was done in an Adobe software, and then it was requested that I send it to PowerPoint. And so all those fonts are not right. It messed up with all the fonts. So the downtown, and I can share the actual PDF so you can see how it would actually look, because the fonts that you see there, only the vehicular signs ones, those are the actual FDOT fonts, that's Highway Gothic, but the fonts used for the gateways are not. So if you see even the downtown, it looks like the letters are overlapping each other. That's not meant to look that way. So I can share the actual PDF of the designs for you to look at them. But the form, the shapes, and the colors of the signs are there. I would just ask if you could please omit the fonts for now.
So the only thing I would suggest, I mean, I think they're all good. I mean, it would be fine, any of them for me, but is maybe we get a mock-up of one before we move forward. I know we do that in my job. We'll get like a mock-up of one of the signs, and or if we get to two that we're kind of stuck in between, then like before we wholesale roll them out.
So when you say mock-up, is a print okay?
No,
to
like bring it
actually-
in, like make a sign.
That's,
bring it in and-
that is expensive. If you want to go that route, I do have
Make a print.
fabricators that we could reach out to. The mock-ups, the portion of the mock-up, we usually go through that once there's a implementation. So once we have specific designs, we create mock-ups just to see that the intent is there and that the signs look the way that we want to look at them. How I've done mock-ups at this level is we print a 2-scale sign.
Yeah, that would be fine. I mean, I think we all have sign shops too. I mean, they can do a lot of this work, but I would, before you, because sometimes you see it in person and you're like, oh, I wish that had been bigger or that it's different, but now you've rolled it out already.
Yeah, I think that's important as well.
Yeah.
Or a 3D version in digital, based on,
That we can do.
We can
give
take
you
pictures
a
of the
rendering.
location and then
Correct.
place it 3D version that we can view it digitally.
Member Irvin?
Yes, thank you. Kissimmee has a nice digital sign as you drive in. I thought we had discussed this previously, of maybe doing something like that where it flashes all the events going on in downtown Kissimmee. I really like that, and their archway too, that welcoming you to downtown, so something like that as well. But will this signage include our entertainment district like guidelines? And a lot of people are still kind of confused on the entertainment district boundaries and everything like that. Will it include that as well?
Absolutely, on a mapping level. So
Okay.
again, there's only so much you can digest at a vehicular level. We can't add too much to that, but once you park and you can see it, I think that's something that we can highlight on a mapping level. Absolutely.
Okay. And I really had favored the option C as well as Councilmember Gilbert. I love the historic look to that and everything. So, but I agree with using the best parts of all of these would be great. That's all.
Thank you.
Member Gilbert?
I'm sorry, just one comment, and I'm going to stick with my signs for dummies. Less verbiage, larger. Descriptiveness goes into somewhere else. You know, what exactly we have. We just want to wow them, bring them in, and then we'll get descriptive as they get further down the line. But my thing is, people don't read small print. They just don't. And then some of the logos you have down underneath these signs, they're really not necessary.
Right.
I'd rather use that area for print versus logos. And I love our logos. I'm not way before my time, but print big, descriptive small, logos less. Just somebody that does this for a living.
Less is more.
Abysmal.
And larger is better, especially when you look at 40 miles an hour, 35 miles an hour, 25 miles an hour. We even got 50 miles an hour coming down 192, coming into the city. Harmony coming into the city, Narcoossee, those are heavy traffic areas. If we do signs there, bigger print, smaller logos. Just my opinion, my modest opinion, but thank you very much. The presentation was great, so thank you.
Thank you.
Abysmal.
Thank you, sir. Just to answer Mr. Irvin's question regarding the entertainment district, at the staff level, we actually discussed using the technology features of some of these signs to link people to the actual website where they can see the map and all of the rules. So we're trying to get creative to create a sense of place so that people that go to the entertainment district, they understand like, oh, okay, this is a different type of design. This is where the fun happens. So at the staff level, we discussed those things as well.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Great presentation, great work.
Thank you.
The letter of intent?
We will make sure that the board gets a copy of the original PDF version of this presentation before we leave this evening.
Go ahead.
Okay.
I'm sorry. So the letter of intent, 1,000 Ohio Avenue.
Yes. So as I have said a couple of times now, we are going into project-based programming. And so, as you know, a month, maybe 6 weeks ago or so, the CRA purchased 900 Ohio Ave with the intent of using, in partnership with the adjacent property, parking lot owned by the church, First United Methodist Church, to create some form of a parking structure. Staff, as well as board member Matheny, has met with the church just to garner their interest and ability and willingness to participate in some form of public-private partnership. Two methods were mentioned. One was the outright purchase option. The other one was the lease. So very quickly, I'm going to go over what it looks like if we were to do the purchase. So the purchase price will be based on the fair market value of which the CRA will obtain an appraisal. The first deposit upon execution of the purchase agreement, with the second deposit due at the end of the inspection and due diligence period. The inspection period will be 270 days, with closing 90 days after the inspection/due diligence period, subject to all applicable land use, zoning, building, and development codes. If a parking structure is not constructed within the time to be determined, then the church will have the option to repurchase the parking structure at fair market value. Prior to commencement of the construction of the parking structure, the CRA will enter into a parking license agreement with the church, granting the right to continue the use of the property for its parking needs. The church shall have So this is the lease option. So the church shall lease the property to the CRA for a term of 99 years, subject to all applicable land use, zoning, building, and development codes. During the inspection due diligence period of 270 days, the CRA shall have the right to terminate while investigating feasibility of construction of a parking facility. The CRA will commence construction within an amount to be determined a number of years to the date of execution of the lease. And if not timely commenced, the church shall have the right to terminate said lease. CRA shall grant the church the perpetual right to use a specific number of parking spaces within the structure. The CRA has the first option of refusal to purchase lease premises at fair market value. And at expiration of the lease, the CRA may renew for an additional 25 years. Again, going under the lease option, at the expiration of the lease, the CRA can renew under the same terms and conditions as the original lease term, and that the party shall bear all costs they incur, including their respective attorney fees. That being said, I wanted to make sure that as we move forward and items that we're asking for the board's authorization, particularly as it pertains to funding, that that we include the statutes or what allows us the authority to execute these such agreements. So this is applicable under Florida Statutes 163, 371C1, which is the acquisition of property within a sum or blighted area by purchase, lease, option, gift, grant, bequest, device, or any other voluntary method of acquisition. It meets our master plan, which is a requirement for any activity that we do. Section A2, to pursue a public-private development or redevelopment opportunity is a major project within the CRA area to build interest, increase revenues, and create additional business activity. It meets Section E5, a phased structured parking replacement on existing or new surface parking lots to accommodate additional development density. And Section H6, to evaluate purchase of key parcels for redevelopment and disposition by the CRA. It meets the city's strategic plan goals of growth management and infrastructure. Staff recommends approval of this item. At this point, staff is requesting the authorization to do a letter of intent for the purchase or lease of the said property.
Member Matheny.
Does the attorney go first?
Mr. Manzares, I just saw your light. Come on. Why
Thank
don't you go ahead and speak first? It probably.
Yeah, I just want to, I think, clarify, based on discussions we've had with the church on this issue, I think what we're asking the CRA board to do is decide which direction you really want to go. I think we have to pick whether the CRA wants to make a purchase offer or they want to make a lease offer. I think that's one direction we have to go. I will tell you, based on our preliminary discussions, I think that the church is preference is to lease it, as you're all business people, so you understand that from a control perspective, owning the property is more advantageous for the CRA if it's going to be able to build it. So that's why we've offered, I think, well, we want some direction on which direction to go. So I don't think we should be presenting a letter of intent that says we're willing to do either one. I think we need to pick which one the CRA would like to pursue, and then we could start the negotiations there. Of course, recognizing that this is only the letter of intent stage, which is what they've asked for, because they obviously have a board they have to go back to and just talk about it. But ultimately, depending on the negotiations, we would be bringing back a formal agreement or a lease, depending on which direction it went, for the CRA to consider at a future meeting.
All right. Member Matheny.
Thank you. I guess my question was going to be, what are the advantages of one versus the other? I guess in my mind, I never imagined we were purchasing it. I thought it was going to be like an agreement with the church and that it was going to be advantageous for both of us, right? Like we would build a covered parking garage. They could have covered parking spaces. You know, I thought it would be more, when you did the lease summary, is there a conversation that's been had about like a payment? So they're expecting like a payment for it? What's the other, because I know we keep talking about the one that exists in Orlando.
The joint partnership that exists in Orlando, as I understand it, there's not a consideration payment going back to the owner of the property. That structure was built with public funds, I'm assuming with CRA or downtown development funds. So that was the consideration, the construction of the structure with the owner of the property having access. That would be part of the lease option here, would be that, as Antoinette pointed out, the church would have access to a dedicated number of parking spaces in the covered parking garage, which obviously is of value to them. So.
Yeah, that's what I had in my mind, was that, you know, hey, we'll build this parking garage, you have 100 parking spaces, we'll give you 100 parking spaces, and, you know, that'll be in covered parking. That's so much better for, you know, we'll have the maintenance, we'll do this, we'll do that, we'll do the other. Not really, I never really envisioned purchasing it unless there's some big advantage. That's, you know, I mean, I guess you're saying, I guess we own it, we have control, and we can do what we want. And I'm sure the lease agreement could have some discussion, like they have the right to review our plans, but they can't withhold approval or something like that. Like the county has language like that we do on partnerships. And I guess I always imagined it was a lease. I don't know how everybody else feels. And that, like I said, we would give them a dedicated number of parking spaces consistent with what they have now. And there you go.
The lease piece was, as we discussed, and you can put all those provisions in there. You can address it. To be perfectly honest, I think the church would rather pursue the lease piece, and I think Mr. Cooper is going to come up and address this point, so I'll let him address it.
He's going to say we don't have the money.
Well, I think the financing options are probably a little bit more flexible if they're the owner of the dirt as opposed to a long-term lease.
Mr. Cooper.
Jeff Cooper, Finance Director. A couple things. I don't believe we can build a structure on a leased piece of land. If we don't own the land, we can't put a structure on it. I do not believe.
Well, I think you can. We can range with, on a long-term lease piece, we probably could be able to do that.
And given the limit of the CRA, just remember any lease liability will revert to the general fund. So depending on the dollar amount associated with it, just so you know, leases have negative financial statement consequences. Basically, they tie up your fund balance, so you can't use it for other purposes. So I don't know how much the purchase price was, but finance votes for purchase.
But we're not talking about a dollar amount in the lease.
If there is no dollar amount associated with it, then yes, those negative financial consequences wouldn't exist. So then that would be okay.
Councilmember Gilbert.
You know, there's a restaurant, it's called McDonald's, and it's a really good restaurant. And there's a gentleman, that Ray Kroc, that invented that and did all that. And his money came from leasing. He leased the land that the buildings were built on and had 99-year leases and made a ton of money off that. So I'm sure the church would enjoy having a lease. If there's no money and common ground with 100 parking spaces, I agree. But if not, we can't have a separate entity control what the city's going to do when we build a parking garage. My thought is, so it has to be clear in print what the lease is. If there's no monetary money being gained by the church or leaseor, that's fine. But if it isn't a 99-year lease with nothing tied to it, purchasing it as a city, I'm not looking at my 3 years I got left. I'm looking at 20 years down the line of what it's going to cost the city to have a parking garage. So that's my only thought. The lease would have to be structured in a long-term lease that wouldn't burden the city after a period of time. That's my only thought between lease and purchasing. When you purchase, you control it. When you lease it, they own it. There's a lot of money to be made in leasing. And again, if you look at McDonald's, they got great burgers. They used to be like 25 cents, now they're $3. But they make more money on the land versus they do on the burgers. That's just my comment on that with leases versus purchasing. Thank you very much.
Mr. Manzarek.
Well, we did have discussions with regard to the lease with the church and their representative, and they understood that the length of the lease would have to be sufficient for basically the city to recover its return, the CRA to recover its return on investment in the structure it's going to build. So that's how those leases are calculated and dealt with. And so, and there would be consideration back to the church. It just wouldn't be in under a lease. It wouldn't be in the typical monthly rental that you see in a lease agreement. So, but again, the consideration would be is the church wouldn't have to maintain the building, but or have any responsibility to it, including liability and risk, and they would have access to a designated number of parking spaces.
Thank you, sir.
Member Fletcher.
For me, I think if we're going to look at this, I think it's something that we should look at buying, because a lot of times, you know, we sit up here, we make decisions, and it's not for something that's necessarily right now. We have to look, 30 years. Who's going to be sitting here 30 years from now dealing with these issues? And, having that large parcel on 10th Street, which is a main corridor into the downtown. I know, like, our entertainment district is this big now and our downtown core is this big, but 30, 40 years from now, it's going to be this big. So that's not going to seem like it's that far away, because I know I've had comments from the community that says, oh, we've purchased that house over there for possible expansion of parking, and they're like, it's so far away. Well, eventually it's not going to be, it's not far away to me at the moment. And as the downtown starts to grow, as these projects that are starting to come to fruition, I think it would be smart to buy it. It also gives us ultimate control over it, and it allows us to have, once it's purchased, immediate parking that we can control. We could pave it, put signage, and we can do whatever we want with it in the meantime. So for me, I would say, purchasing it. I don't know the funds. I know we're going to be looking at the budget here and just at the end of this. And I don't know if it's something that could be financed. I don't know all of those details, but I would be in favor of the purchase of it.
Member Wagner.
All right, well, I'm certainly for the purchase of it, since we just decided to purchase the house behind it. Make it all one, and for the long term, like Mr. Fletcher said, and I think that we were just talking about how long the CRA is going to last, and we want the expansion. Of course, we want the expansion, but if that never happens, that CRA property, that lease, what happens with that lease, from a CRA lease to now, they have full pull over it. The church does. And another situation, it's still their property. We are leasing it, but if we have an event like we just had this past weekend, and we have vehicles parking in their designated parking spots, are they towing them? We can't do that to our citizens. I know I get it, it's church parking only, but they're like, oh, there's an event, we should be able to park here anyway. So there's a lot of things with that lease that I don't agree with. I think we should purchase it, if the church is up for it.
Are you through, Mr. Fletcher?
I'm sorry.
Member Matheny?
Thank you. But what you presented in the purchase, they still get their parking spaces. It had language in there about their parking
Right,
spaces.
so if you look at certain situations like where this has been done around the state, there are designated parking spaces. The beauty of having an arrangement like this with a church is that the church parking need is typically on off times from when any special events would occur. The lease agreement would have some sort of provision in it that would address what we would envision as the needs for the city moving forward as special events. We would address that as terms of the agreement, in either the sale agreement. When we were asked and we were working on these bullet points, for lack of a better expression, to put into a potential letter of intent, which is what the church has asked for, we put in the designated parking spaces because we knew that was part of the need for the church in both options. The envision was that the designated parking spaces for a purchase and sale would actually be credited against the ultimate purchase price. So the idea would be that the appraisal would come up with a fair market value, and then we would determine a value associated that the church gains for having designated parking, and that would essentially come off the purchase price. How that would play out is math, which is why I went to law school, because I can't do math. So we'd have to work through that piece, but that's essentially the idea.
Well, I'm going to speak to this also. I would not support a lease. I just think what it does, it creates a long-term potential for conflict with the church on down the road. It creates a potential in the future for future council saying, why in the world do they sign us into a 9-year contract? I just think it has too many potentials for conflict. I think you could, if you purchase it, you can certainly work out an agreement where, if the church sells us the property, we're going to give you favorable status for use of the facility. But I just think ownership.
And without knowing the appraised
It's a smarter way to
value,
go.
you do have funding set aside for downtown parking that was funded with the CRA. And then you're going to have somewhere in the neighborhood of $700,000 that you're going to have to dedicate to a CRA project for the FY 22-23 carryover. Hopefully be available by the next meeting. So that's near $2 million that you have available for this purpose.
Member Fletcher.
Sorry, turned it back on. I guess obviously we're going to send it out for an appraisal, but does anybody have like a roundabout number of what it could potentially cost to buy?
So I do not have that specific number, but I did want, just in terms of context, to let you know that when staff met with the pastor and their attorney, we proffered both options, both the lease and the sale. And what they explained to us is that their preference is for more favorable for a lease. And then I also wanted to address our finance director's comments about money that's been set aside for downtown parking. The $1 million that's been set aside is for the proposed mixed-use parking garage. Now, the additional amount that should come back to you about February of next year, which is our fund allocation balance, that is something that we could look at for future projects as well. So when we talked about RMA gave the list of particular projects, the gateway signage, the alleyway improvements, those type projects, we now need to prioritize which ones are going to go first. So it may seem like a lot of money, but not when we start attaching projects to it.
So to clarify, so if we were to look at purchasing this or leasing this for parking, for a parking structure, so we had the multi-use parking, and then So those would be two separate projects? So we would potentially put a parking structure here and then also have the multi-use parking structure as well?
Correct.
Or
So,
so in my mind, I was like, okay, that if we still have that going on, the multi-use, and we were to do something like this, we would be kind of leaning more towards this versus building a whole nother parking structure. So now we're talking about two.
yes, we're
different
referring to two
developments.
separate developments, two
Okay.
separate projects.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Manzares, what do you need from us?
We need some direction of which, again, we're right now, we're just looking for direction on whether, first, obviously, if the CRA wants the staff to pursue this opportunity, and if the preference for the CRA board would be to go the sale option or the lease option. And if you, if we really need a consensus. Again, this is going to come back before you if we can get that far with, appropriate terms. And then if you are going to go the sale option, we would need some direction to basically be able to retain an appraiser to come in and do the valuation of the property.
So, you need a motion from us, or just a preference?
It depends what it's, from what my reading of it, I think what I heard from comments, the consensus was the sale option would be the number one option for the board. And then, and we could pursue that. I think that's sufficient. An appraisal of this property would probably, based on prior appraisals, would probably cost, the one we did was about $2,000, $2,200 for that was a little more complicated because it was 10 different parcels or something, right?
Right, but it was minimal.
Yeah, but it'll be about that cost. So I think unless Antoinette thinks she needs more direction, we certainly can get the property appraised and we can move in that, and we'll have negotiations with the thing. I think what was key to our discussions was we wanted to bring back at least a good consensus as to where this board would be so that we could let the church know this is the direction the board wants to move. And so we could at least focus the discussions.
Member Matheny?
Yes, it sounds like I'm in the minority on my lease option, but if you're not able to work it out, I don't want it to die.
It won't die. It would come.
Okay.
We would come back before you and say, this is obviously this is a large undertaking. The first step is working out some agreement. The second step is going to be, which is why there's a 270-day inspection due diligence period, is going to be is the construction of this parking facility even feasible from a financial perspective as well from a construction perspective to be able to get to that, because there are a lot of unknowns on it. How many parking spaces you're going to build, how big's the garage going to be, those kind of things. So this is the initial step to get to the point of even going through that before we move forward to potential construction. And Mr. Wagner raised a very good point, which unfortunately I do not have the answer to. I am not sure what the impact of this CRA expiring during that long-term lease period. I apologize, I do not have.
I just think it's going to create a problem, like Mr. Blackwell said.
Yeah,
And for the long term, honestly.
Yeah.
Because CRA may end 20 years from now, and the city of St. Cloud is going to be in a big battle with that leased land.
So that would be, if we go the lease route, that's something we'd have to figure out how we're going to deal with it.
So do we have a majority consensus that we move forward with a purchase as our first option?
Appraisal.
Purchase.
Okay.
You don't want them all.
Except for one holdout. All right, you have some direction, sir.
We do, thank you, Mayor.
Do you have anything else on that? We're done? Our next item is the St. Cloud Hotel Agreement.
So staff has been working on this for quite some time. I am pleased to say I think we have come to the tail end of this. So the last direction we received from the board was to negotiate, the city manager was to negotiate with the hotel owner and then bring back an agreement. And so that is where we are. There is one correction from the packet that you received versus the PowerPoint that you see, and that is the deadline for the roof. It is January 31st, 2024. Everything else remains the same. So just for some context, if you recall, 2 years ago, I think, the board in its fund balance allocation allocated up to $300,000 towards this project. What you see now includes the sandblasting, the roof, the dormer windows, and plaster, totaling up to $274,730. Again, giving you some context, that this project, or this agreement rather, is eligible under Chapter 163, 370.13, which talks about the installation, construction, or reconstruction of streets, utilities, public areas of major hotels that are constructed in support of parking garages and other improvements necessary to carrying out CRA objectives. It is eligible under 163, 370.15, carrying out plans for the programming of voluntary repair and rehab of buildings in accordance with the CRA plan. It meets our master plan goals, Section A2, to pursue a public-private development or redevelopment opportunity as a major project in the CRA area to build interest, increase revenues, and create additional business activity, encourage reconstruction and infill construction in significant parcels on New York Ave. It also meets our strategic plan goals under economic development and growth management. It's important to note that the agreement has been executed as of this evening, and the owner is here. If you have any questions, staff recommends approval of this agreement, and we're here for questions.
Would the owner like to speak to this item? You don't have to, but if you want to, would you? Come forward then. It's good to see you, Albert.
Yes, good to see you all, and thank you for having me here.
You'll state your name, please.
Albert Lega, owner of St. Cloud Hotel. Yes, I would like to thank you for giving this support to keep moving with the project and to rebuild the history and to keep this as a jewelry in the middle of St. Cloud. I strongly believe that this is a very good investment from CRA to the St. Cloud Hotel, since provide 4 commercial spaces, more than 200 people in the same time. So the design, the MEP design, is quite aggressive. Like, we have planned for 400 people for parties, wedding, and so on. So this is going to be a good tax return to the CRA board, to the CRA program, let's say, development in this part of the city. We have done similar with Hunter Arms, and we are full occupies. We have 8 storage businesses that are doing well. So we move forward with the next one. Yes, I have been seeing you guys all. I approve the agreement, so we are in the meantime, we will continue the renovation. And then, I don't know, if you have any question, you can go ahead and...
Okay. Well, certainly it's good seeing the progress that has happened just recently in the building.
Yeah.
And it's very encouraging to see that. Member Gilbert.
Yes, I have met with the owner of the hotel, and we spoke about the hotel and the significance of that being a centerpiece for the city of St. Cloud. We also talked about it being a 3-legged bar stool. You have corporate transit business, you have vacationers, and then you have weddings, events, and things such as that. I would like to continue this. This is something that I strongly was in disbelief of things moving, but as the mayor said, things are moving well. I would also like to mention, once this is done, I would like the marketing idea to have both of those hotels marketed so we could use that as corporate business that comes in, because as you know, it's a 3-tier business, and corporate usually is your highest, and vacationers are your lowest. Love the hotel, the plans, the enthusiasm is there. My concern is just moving forward, and if we do so, I think it would be a great project to do. I think we need to tie it in with your other property and utilize that as we market it for future events. Corporate transits business, like I said, the 3-legged bar stool, as we spoke about when we were meeting. Thank you very much for your comments, and thanks for meeting with me.
Member Wagner.
Thank you, Albert. And I've been with this project since pretty much day one, right across the street from it. If I could have got a nickel for every time I'd say what's going on with this hotel, I could probably stay there for 2 years free. So Albert and I have built a great relationship, you know, and I've seen that from the ups and downs throughout that whole project. It was just a couple weeks ago. I toured the whole thing. I spent 3.5 hours in there, from the roof all the way down. So it is coming along really well. Anything we can do to still continue to help them to keep this thing going, because this is going to be an absolute staple to downtown. Like Ken just said, if we can market it that way, I think it'd be excellent. There is some serious history in that building. So thank you, Albert.
Thank you. Member Fletcher.
Thank you, Albert. I really appreciate you meeting with us, or meeting with me, to go over the project. I think one of the because as you know, I had a hard time with this. The hotel's been under construction literally my entire life. And I think when it comes to projects like this where issues arise, I think the number one issue is communication. Being able to communicate with you on the things that are going on with the project, and then giving us information so that we can communicate with the community of actually what's going on. Everybody drives by, they don't know what's going on. So I appreciate you giving us, I've walked through the building, I've got the binder, I can show the public that there is work going on. And then also, you brought up things in our meeting that I wasn't even aware of the struggles and challenges and hurdles. I've heard small bits and pieces over the past year, but you were able to touch and highlight on some of those items. It is significant to our downtown. You guys have done great work with Hunter Arms. I could only imagine, like we were talking in the meeting, you fix a leak here and then a pinhole happens here, and you've been able to paint it, make it better. There's thriving businesses in there that we didn't have before, and it is both of those buildings are significant to the success of our downtown, whether it be the markets or during the week. I did want to clarify that no money has been transferred to the St. Cloud Hotel. That would be done with this agreement tonight. Also, if the final painted and finished state is not done by November 15th, 2024, or extended, then there's triggers in there. That's item E on page 3. And then on item F, if the CO isn't issued by September 15th, 2027, then there's triggers in there for us to ensure that the money for the CRA that was spent on this project is protected. And with those comments, thank you for the work that you guys have done. I know I was strongly against it, but you have turned it around, and at this point in this juncture, I do support the things that you're doing to finally get it taken care of. And the scaffolding's coming down, the corner's starting to look better. I'm sure 10th Street and the other folks on the road are happy to see some movement over there. So thank you, Albert.
You're welcome.
Member Urban.
Yes, I would just also like to say I had the opportunity to meet with Mr. Albert, and I really do appreciate the explanation of the journey that this hotel has been through, and definitely also appreciate the hard work that staff put together for this agreement. It does have a lot of protections for the CRA in the city, as as Member Fletcher mentioned, and as he also said, just the communication. We love seeing updates. We love seeing progress. I know our residents would love to see pictures and progress as it continues on. So we're just excited for the future, and I know that it will ignite a new era in our downtown. So thank you for that.
And with that, I would like to make a motion that we approve the item that has been presented for us for the approval of the funds for the assistance with the completion of this project. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second from Member
Wagner.
Adam. Madam Clerk, please call the roll. Can we just vote on this?
Yes, you can do it, just a voice.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And it passes unanimously. Look forward to seeing that thing finished, hopefully before I'm off of this dais here.
Yes, as I have been mentioning in the meeting, that we will try to do this as a first phase, as the contract mentioned in
Good.
November 2024.
Good.
As the exterior, moving the scaffolding down, then we continue working inside, and then details will be followed till we have the final occupying certificate. So.
Well, the more you can communicate to us, I think the more you're going to continue to have us in your corner.
Yeah.
And thank you,
I can
that's
see
very
that,
important.
and I really appreciate it.
And we will lovingly continue to encourage you to move forward fast. Thank you, Albert.
Thank you very much.
The next item on our agenda is the CRA policing agreement.
Almost there. So the next item is the policing agreement. As you know, the CRA has an agreement with the St. Cloud Police in order to provide innovative policing. The original agreement was for 5 officers and 1 code. As we've gone back and re-reviewed the anticipated projects that we plan on doing, as well as the effectiveness, which it has been a very effective program in terms of crime reduction, we want to reevaluate the existing contract and see how we can do a cost saving so we can redirect some of those dollars for projects. So this policing agreement now reduces the amount of officers from 5 to 3. It also removes the code compliance officer who was already removed. And I also want to note that the reason the code compliance officer was removed is that there was no way to, for the officer to stay strictly within the CRA, which is a requirement if we were paying 100%. So in order to remain in compliance, we had to remove that position. All other contract terms and the reporting requirements remain the same. And in fact, this, from a budgetary standpoint, which our finance director can speak to, it has already happened. Now we're just having the contract put in place so that it matches. So this policing agreement is eligible under Chapter 163, 387, 6A8, which monies in the trust fund can be expended for the development of innovative policing, for community policing innovations. It meets our CRA master plan goals in Section 8A, A8, the development of a comprehensive public safety initiative that address public safety needs within the CRA district. It meets our strategic plan goals of financial sustainability and public service. Staff recommends approval of the attached agreement, and we are available for questions.
Member Adam.
I don't agree with getting rid of CRA officers. Again, I've been down here a long time with my business, and CRA officers, since this program has started, has been excellent to our business. Absolutely excellent. And we are continuing to grow. We have more and more people that are coming down. We're just talking about tonight bringing more people down because we're going to put signages to bring more people down. Shrinking our CRA officers is not that's getting rid of public safety down here, to me, is not okay.
Member Fletcher.
So I just wanted to thank the police department for everything that they do, and maybe the chief can speak to this. So I know we are reducing the number, but with the COPS grant, that allows, was it 5 or 6 additional community policing officers to serve the community as a whole, not necessarily focusing within the CRA, but they will still be servicing the CRA and their community policing initiatives?
Thank you, Mr. Gerke.
Because the one thing that, because the CRA, the great thing about the officers operating and doing the community policing in the CRA is they build relationships with the store owners over time. I've spoken to people in the Save a Lot parking lot. They have an issue. They don't even necessarily, call the police department. They're like, oh, let me call so-and-so, and he'll be here within a few minutes. He's around the corner.
Yes, Doug Gerke, Police Chief. Yes, so you're 100% correct. We did just get a COPS grant as well. Obviously, every time that there's an event down here for the CRA, we do supplement it with other patrol officers as well, just to supplement the CRA officers. So you are going to see them still here as well, but the idea of making that community engagement unit, you're going to see them even more than you would, and it's not necessarily going to be funded by the CRA. You'll still see officers down here, especially that community engagement unit that we're building. They will be in here on bicycles and everything else. So I think it was more of a financial impact to try to actually increase the, and I don't want to speak out of turn, but to increase maybe the parking garage and things like that. So we would actually take them back over onto the police department side for the budget, for budgetary. So the officers are still going to be there, but yes, they were going to remove 2 of the CRA officers, but with the COPS grant coming on board, you are going to see quite a bit more police officers down at the lakefront, and especially down here supplementing our CRA officers.
So it's really just a shifting of money.
That's all it is, sir. Okay. Yes, sir. That's correct.
Mr. Manzera.
Yeah, I just want to point out, so over the last few years, statewide, the review of CRAs and the expenditures, these type of agreements have been a focus for the state and auditors as to the, whether the use of the CRA funds for certain purposes. The reason why these are a little bit in my mind, are a little bit more scrutinized is because, as Antoinette mentioned, it is difficult to show the 100% use of the provision of the service in the geographic area associated with the CRA, which is one of the main requirements of what auditors in the state look at. So there's respectfully probably a little bit too much wiggle room in these things, which is why we're recommending that this agreement be reduced. And as the chief pointed out, it's not going to change the service, it's only going to change the allocation of the dollars associated with it.
Thank you. Mr. Cooper.
Jeff Cooper, Finance Director. Basically, I was going to echo exactly what he just said. Our auditors have raised concerns in the past that the funding for CRA is not specifically meant for this purpose. They've come to accept the limited amount that we use it for, but in their honest opinion, we should be using zero. So just passing that along. So they've accepted that we use some, but CRAs are supposed to be for brick and mortar, not to supplement the general fund, which is in essence what it's doing.
Right. Member Gilbert.
I'm going to shut off my light because I was going to ask the police chief how he's going to handle it, but he just explained it, and and Antoinette and I know about CRA. We've been working very hard with CRA, and I think this is a great thing. I was just going to ask, and Councilman Fletcher asked, how are you going to handle the change, and you explained it very well, so thank you, Chief. I don't have any other comment, Mayor.
Thank you. Do we have any other discussion? If not, could we have a motion for the approval of this item?
I'll make a motion.
We have a motion from Member Loading, and do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Member Fletcher. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? And it so carries unanimously. Brings us to the next item, and that's our bi-monthly financials.
Jeff Cooper, Finance Director. This is the year-end report for FY 22-23. And as you can see, bottom line revenues, we collected a little bit more than we anticipated we would, 118,000. So our actual revenues were 1,568,000. And for 22-23 expenditures, we spent 976,000. So the difference between those two, once it's finalized by the auditors, will be what your carryover balance is that has to be dedicated to perhaps the purchase of the parking lot or put in the downtown parking project or some other combination of projects. This is our 23-24 to date. Kind of early, so not much activity. We normally receive the county contribution in late December. Last year was even into January. That is a set contribution, so I can tell you for the remainder of the CRA period, you have $12,092,000 coming to you from the county, because it's an agreement, so it doesn't matter what the valuations are. Operating interest, our investments have been doing better than the previous year, so we expect actually to exceed that $30,000. And just as a side note, that interfund transfer will actually be $606,000, not $332,000, because that's the city portion of the TIF. So that's the TIF valuation times our ad valorem rate. So you will be getting $606,000. So there's another $300,000 for you that you didn't already have. So perhaps that can go towards the purchase as well. And for expenditures, haven't spent much so far other than the personnel costs. So we've only spent $244,000 of our $1.6 million budget. Any particular budget type of questions?
Member Fletcher.
I just want to, thank you for everything that you do, and thank you for the update. One of the things that I would like to see is, because we only meet every so often. We don't meet as much as the city council is. I would like to see, can we get like a list of all of the projects, the funds that are allocated to each one, and then like some type of tracking placed on them? I know Abysmal does that for some of our city council projects where we get an update all the time. If that's something that we could implement so that the board can kind of see like where is all this stuff. I feel like a lot of times when we come to the CRA board, it's a lot of ideas and a lot of things, and I kind of want to get an overview of like really where is everything at on a timeline, so that we can attach it to money and try to speed it up a little bit if we can.
We'll work on that.
Internet question, I guess.
Sorry.
I can help
Yes.
her. I didn't want to answer for her.
So I assume there's a consensus on our board for that? Thank you, there is.
Any other questions?
Any other questions?
No, thank you very much.
We thank you for that information. Does anyone on our board have a comment you would like to make or any updates you need to give us? If not, does anyone in the audience, our vast audience, wish to speak to the board? If not, our next CRA meeting is scheduled for Thursday, February the 1st, 2024 at 6 p.m. God bless you. Hope you all have a blessed Christmas and a wonderful New Year by the time we meet again. Thank you. We're done.